Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to BiblioTech on Air, BiblioTech's official podcast. I'm Rosanna.
I'm Lewis.
And I'm Romeo.
And today we're going to be covering our latest Libros and Libations pick, The Life We Bury by Allen Eskens, available on Hoopla and CloudLibrary in both ebook and audiobook format.
Yeah, so how does everyone feel about this book? How did everyone like it? Because I did not personally go to Libros last night, and I heard that y'all had some, pretty mellow discussion, honestly, and I wanted to see how y'all felt about it.
I think the consensus, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think the consensus was that nobody hated it. Mm-hmm. Nobody necessarily said they loved it either. Mm-hmm. It was just kind of like, it was a quick read, something, you want to dive into. You have a few extra hours, no big deal. But I think when I asked the question at the end, which, I'll jump ahead a little bit, but I asked, would you recommend this book to others? And I think the consensus also there was like, they probably wouldn't. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. Rosanna?
It was entertaining enough that you want to keep reading it, in my opinion, that I wanted to keep reading it. Mm-hmm. With that said, though, I wouldn't recommend it. It was... Well, we'll get into that.
Yeah. I'm not going to get into full extent of what I felt, but let's just say that I thought that the story itself was serviceable for what it was trying to do, but every conceivable way that it was written really irked me, and I will probably touch on that a few times in a few different ways as we go along.
I think that'll add to the conversation. So we can start. So you kind of touched on this a little bit, but how did you experience the book? Were you immediately drawn into the story, or did it take you a while?
I feel like I started the interest level that I had while reading this book peaked at the beginning, and it just went along, and I made the joke to y'all. It felt like the plot was not thickening, the plot was thinning as things went along.
Sure.
My intrigue really just waned, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was my, initial perception of it. Like you, it started off pretty good for me. I was like, okay, this is a quick, I was listening to the audio. By the time I knew it, I was like an hour in. I'm like, okay, this is starting off pretty good. And then it just plateaued. And the rest of the book for me was just a straight line. Mm. It was just, that's all it was. And I think some people yesterday at the book club, they actually said that the book, sort of picked up for them later in the book, not in the very beginning. So,
okay.
As far as getting into the book, it did take me a little while to kind of be interested, and even then, it's just I wasn't super invested.
Okay.
There wasn't really a character that I was rooting for, or someone that I really cared about their outcome. I just wanted to see how everything played out.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we don't talk about, but we should consider, is the fact that you read the physical book. Mm-hmm. You're making voices for yourself of the characters, you're just hearing your own voice,
right,
as opposed to hearing the narrator and how they read through it and how they sound. Mm-hmm. I think that's a big deal breaker for some of the staff that we were talking to yesterday, because they're kind of like, well, I didn't like the way, the narrator did this person's voice or this, and that can really turn you off for a book, I think. So
yeah, it was simultaneously really plotting, but also just there was just not a lot. Going from the audiobook for Sunset on the Reaping, the new Hunger Games book, to this was kind of a huge whiplash for me, because that audiobook is so well narrated versus this one. It was just very monotone.
Yeah.
And the character voices just kind of came off a little silly to me,
So second question. So what did you think of Carl Iverson initially? And how did your opinion of him change as you got to know him? So for our listeners, if Carl Iverson is the man who is accused of murdering a young woman back in the day, I guess. So how did you all, what did you think of him initially? And how did your opinion of him change?
They kind of tried to give him that air of mystery, which, the book itself is a mystery, granted. But it was fairly predictable. That he's not going to be this kind of mystery, kind of weird, dismissive man. Mm-hmm. I feel like they didn't set him up well enough.
Yeah.
I don't think he was set up well enough.
I personally think the ball was dropped so severely in terms of his character, because it does itself a disservice by making him, setting him up the way that it did. It's very obvious from the get-go that he's well, I may or may not have murdered that girl, well, I'll never tell. Murdering and killing are different things. And I'm like, okay, so he didn't murder her, because that's a twist that they're trying to set up.
Sure.
But like, I really just think this book could have done really well to explore him as like a morally gray person.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that they try to, but every step of the way, whenever he's explaining himself and explaining the quote unquote horrible things that he's done, a lot of them are just kind of come off as like he's being too hard on himself.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, oh, he's actually a morally gray character.
Yeah.
And I just think that it probably would have done really well to just give him a little bit more of like unethical behavior and not try to justify it at every turn in order to make him still a likable character. That drove me up the wall a little bit, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and then also like towards like the second half of the book, you really don't get much on Carl anymore.
No.
It
Yeah.
seems like the focus just shifts to
Joe and to
Yeah.
Lila and the brother. I forgot the brother's name.
Jeremy.
Jeremy.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a shame, because the whole plot, I guess the main plot device of the book should have been Carl and his, like trying to exonerate him, trying to clear his
Mhm.
name. You have a time limit. This man's probably going to die.
Yeah.
He is
Yeah.
going to die before, anything can happen. So let's try and get that done. But it just kind
Yeah.
of,
I agree. There was no character development, and I'm not saying that every character in every book has to have like this great backstory, but truly it was just like, here's this dying man out of
Yeah.
jail. He's like at a nursing home now, and he's
Mm.
just gonna die, and he killed somebody. It's just
Yeah.
kind of like, okay,
Like,
and then
Outside of the whole like Joe feels like some guilt for like how he quote unquote caused his own grandfather to die.
yeah.
I really saw no reason why Joe was fighting so hard for this guy.
Yep.
Every like he goes so hard for this like English project trying to like correct this case, and only like later is he like, yeah, it's probably because of the way I feel about my grandpa's death. And it's like, it feels like that was backfilled in,
Yeah.
like
that, but also like he was trying to kind of use it as points to impress Lila.
that too.
Yeah.
I did not like Joe. I did not care for Joe.
I'll be honest, the editors probably went back and said, like, you got to tie this in somehow. So there was probably a lot of editing that went into this, like multiple edits.
Doesn't
then it
feel like it.
I just feel like personally, like when the author submitted this, it was probably like, this is kind of trash, right?
Yeah.
And maybe they saw some potential in it being just this cheesy, quick fiction read. And it's like, you know what,
Yeah.
just kind of make it make sense a little more. But like to your point, it still didn't, it wasn't great.
Yeah,
So.
no. Like, and it would have, like, this sort of plot, it feels so contrived. And not to diss young adult fiction, because it spans so many genres, but, like, it does kind of feel like a little schlocky, like,
Okay.
young adult to me.
Sure.
But then it goes into such deep, dark topics and expects you to take them so seriously that I'm like, I have no choice but to analyze this seriously. And the plot is so like predictable and contrived, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah, I think this book could have had some success as a juvenile fiction or a young
For
adult.
sure.
Seriously,
Yeah.
I think it would have made more sense that way.
It's like two college students stumble into correcting a murder case and still have enough time to get to English class afterwards. Like
Yeah.
that feels like some Scooby-Doo stuff, you know? But then it's like it's got so many dark topics, and it's like it's that it uses for shock factor and
Exactly.
nothing else. And it's
Yeah.
like, what are we doing, man? What are we doing?
So everybody kind of asked yesterday, like, what grade did he get on that paper? Like, he better have gotten an A.
Honestly,
For
like
real.
if you're gonna go through all that effort, you bet if the teacher gave you anything less than like a B, I'm suing.
That's
I hope he failed his other
the
classes.
disrespect. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the only class he had in college.
He
That's the
literally
only one.
He makes
That's true,
yeah,
right?
He makes passing references. He's like, "Oh man, this and all my other homework." I'm like, "Doesn't seem like you're doing a lot of your other homework, my guy." You know, like
He never slept. Yeah, he's over here solving crimes like all day, but
Mhm.
didn't have time for class, apparently. Other classes. So.
Oh my god.
But then he's over here worried about like I gotta give my mom her money.
Oh man, we'll
Yeah.
we'll
We're
get
gonna
we'll
get
get
into
into mom right now. So so Carl Iverson had a dying declaration. So do you believe that people tell the truth before they die? Why or why not?
Not necessarily all the time. Like
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
probably more than anything people banking on like, well, it's they're dying, you know. What reason would they have to lie? But
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
people who are gonna maintain that they didn't do that thing
Till the end.
until like the end, knowing dang well that bro, everything you just said is a whole lie.
Yeah.
Like, you're just still trying to make yourself, have this image of you.
Yeah.
Is it like the ultimate power over their victim, like, or the families as well? Just kind of like, well, too bad. Like, I'm taking this with me.
Yeah, because people want to bank so much on the honor code. I guess, like, back then, it was definitely something more honorable.
Sure.
But nowadays, you really can't take people's word at face value, even on their own deathbed.
Yeah, I would lie on my deathbed.
You would?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That outfit looks great on you. Dad.
Like, I'm not gonna,
That's
like,
so messed up.
I'm very truthful to a lot of people in my life, but how funny would it be if I was just like, by the way, DB Cooper, the guy who jumped out of a plane and stole millions of dollars,
That was me.
and then just die.
But you were born in whatever. No, it was
No.
me. It was me.
I'm old. I'm older than I told you. I'm so
You know,
sorry.
the crazy thing, you probably could convince people that it was you and be like, oh my God, it was
Yeah,
Lewis.
because
Jimmy Hoffa?
Because he's telling us.
I buried him.
Yeah, because he's telling the
life
truth
we
on his
buried Jimmy
deathbed.
Hoffa. Yeah, I think some people. I think you make an excellent point. The dying declaration thing. I think there was some sort of maybe honor code between serial killers and killers back in the day of like, okay, let me just kind of. But you're right. Nowadays, it's like, when you hear about that, it's like, well, we don't know crap because this person. I don't want to get too off topic, but there was a serial killer named Israel Keys, and he admitted to a few things because they linked him to it. But there were like potentially like 30 or 40 other murders that he was just kind of like, maybe not.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about.
It's great as a plot device to assume that someone's dying declaration has to be true.
Correct.
It's great for this in service of the plot to just have that as an established, like, everyone knows this, but in reality it just crumbles, as a lot of different topics in this book do.
So let's get into that a little bit. So family plays a significant role in the novel, from Joe's strained relationship with his mother to his bond with his brother. How do the different family dynamics in the book affect the characters' decisions and motivations?
Not enough.
Not enough?
Rosanna?
Y'all have something to say, so.
It's okay. A lot of my problems with the way that this book is written in general is that everything is in service to just moving the plot along, and it does not actually feel like in the beginning they make it out to be like, okay, this is a really tense situation. Like, Jeremy is genuinely in danger because he is with a negligent parent who seems to be dating an abusive boyfriend or something like that. And, like, there are stakes involved in Joe wanting to have Jeremy in his life and needing to go back and forth, taking care of Jeremy, but also going to college and just trying to make sure that he is safe from his mother. But then it just forgets that. For a good long portion of the book, Jeremy is back with his abusive mother and the guy who literally beat him. Yeah. And Joe doesn't think about him a lick, like, not even a little bit. And that entire time, I'm just like, and is Jeremy okay? Is he, like, because you guys really built up that this was a big deal and that their brotherly love, like, that felt like it was going to be the heart of the book, but it feels like it forgets about Jeremy as soon as he solves the code,
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Like,
because what was it? The typing code?
Yeah, like
in the
diary.
In the journal. Yeah. The diary.
And as for the whole thing with the mother, literally, I feel like the only reason that they were like, oh yeah, I got to spend all of my money that is going to affect my college fund, is to bail her out. And the only reason that he bails her out plot-wise is so that she can keep causing problems, like in the story.
In the story.
Yeah.
I know you had some opinion about about Joe giving the mom money to bail her out. So what did you think about that relationship? And then you make a good point, Lewis, about the brother thing. It was like, we can get into this a little bit also, but we asked the question also, like, after this, we said, like, is it fair for Jeremy to keep living for Joe to continue living his life? Mm-hmm. I mean, the mom too, like, I mean, not that she's a great person, but, she does mention, like, I have a life too, damn it. Like, I should be able to do this and X, Y, and Z. Obviously, Jeremy's 18. She thinks he can take care of himself. He can't. But I guess, does it stop people from living their life? Should it?
I mean, no, but not to the extent, because she's just looking to, self-gratify, indulge, all of this excess. There's a difference between living your life and abandoning all responsibility. Mm-hmm. And she is using that to justify abandoning the responsibility of her child, who, again, like you said, he's 18, but mentally he's not going to be 18.
Correct.
He's going to require care.
Correct.
And she uses that to guilt Joe quite a bit into just like, well, you abandoned us. You know, you're making your own life out there. It's two separate things when you're, you know, trying, because he's in college.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing good things for his life. He's still checking in on his brother to an extent because, again, you know.
Yeah.
But his mom's just out here going to casinos, blowing the money, which it's implied that, you know, she's blowing the Social Security money
Correct.
that he gets for him, which that kind of never gets resolved either. But,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay, so speaking of Joe and his mom, we touched on a little bit of their relationship. So he has a strained relationship with his mother, and it's clear that both have a lot of emotional baggage. So how does their relationship evolve over the course of the novel, and were there any moments between them that surprised you?
It does not evolve.
It doesn't evolve.
No,
is
not
the
at
thing.
all.
It's more things happen, but nothing changes from the beginning. Literally, the beginning of the book, she's getting arrested, and he's like, "Mom, I'm ashamed of you. This is like leaving me in a bad position. This is leaving Jeremy in a bad position. I'm gonna bail you out." And then later, she's like, she sees like Joe goes after her abusive boyfriend who like hit his brother.
Yeah.
And you think like, okay, maybe this is like a turning point where the mom realizes like that she's with a bad person. No, she stays with him, and then
it happens again.
And then it happens again. And Joe is still like, "Mom, I'm disappointed. You're leaving me in a bad position. You're leaving Jeremy in a bad position," until he can get Jeremy out of there. There is no growth between Joe and his mother, in my opinion, you know?
And even that fallout, it was just like, that was the end of it. Like, he's just like, okay, I'm taking Jeremy, and that's it. Like, at that point, don't you think, like, okay, heck it, I'm calling the police, I'm going no contact, you've been a terrible, like, just some kind of resolution to that. It feels like there's no resolution, and not to say that you're always going to get resolution in those kinds of situations, but it, again, kind of aimed to build up some kind of resolution or fallout, and it just completely petered out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you there. They didn't close that up at all at the end. It was just like, you know, okay, nice little bow.
Yeah.
And that was it.
And you get to keep the Social Security money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So Joe's relationship with Lila plays an important role in his personal growth. So how does their relationship evolve throughout the book? So their relationship, and what do they learn from each other, and how does it impact the overall narrative?
Rosanna,
We talked a little
would
bit
y'all like
about
to go
this.
first, actually?
No. Like, I don't have much of an opinion on this one. Honestly, I just felt like it was the author's attempt to just have some sort of relationship.
Some kind of
male author.
Yep.
Let me, the guy's the hero. The girl needs his help. That's just kind of where I went with it.
It was very much like male wish fulfillment.
Correct.
Yep.
She had no development. She would have probably been better off and more interesting if they had just kept her as like the neighbor who occasionally, like, maybe checks on Jeremy or pitches her 2 cents to the case. But
exactly, yeah.
honestly, this book probably could not have had Lila, and you would not have noticed. Which
Exactly.
is kind of sad because it felt so unnecessary, and the romance between them did not feel developed. It didn't feel sincere. Again, I can't help but stress, it just felt like, the man gets everything he wants.
Exactly. That's what I got out of it.
Not to mention the fact that literally she is there to be yet another female character who is at the receiving end of assault and violence for shock factor and not a whole lot else. Literally, she is just like pretty one note, helping Joe with the case every once in a while, being the love interest, sort of. And then you get one scene where they're out at like dinner after a play, and she's like, I haven't had it good either. And then literally her trauma comes up to her and is like, "Hey, remember your trauma?"
Yeah.
And she runs away crying. And then Joe beats the guy up, runs away, big action scene. He got revenge for the shocking thing that happened to the lady.
Sure.
And then he goes up to her and is like, "Hey, are you okay?" And she's just like, "By the way, just letting you know my backstory is," and like just goes on like that. And then she's like, "Stay with me." And then the next morning she kisses him.
Yep.
And it's just like, yep. And that's all. And then she doesn't show up again for like a while after the code breaking. And then when she shows back up again, damsel in distress.
Exactly.
She gets kidnapped.
Exactly.
It's threatened for her to get assaulted. And that makes Joe feel real bad.
I agree.
It's...
And it's not just her. It's like, when you hear about like bad things happening to the male characters in this book, you get a little bit of a description, but it doesn't go too in depth. Like when they kill what's his face at the end, the brother.
The brother.
Yeah.
The other brother,
the
not
other
Jeremy.
brother.
For those of you who
Danny.
don't care about spoilers,
I think his name was Danny.
There you go.
But you know, it's like he got shot. There's blood. Okay, but then you hear about the trauma the female characters went through, and it's just like, my goodness, we don't need these incredibly graphic. Like, one thing is finding like, you know, we found a decomposing body of a female, and we had to use the dental records. Okay, that's fairly understandable. This is a mystery book and there's going to be murders.
Sure.
But going so in depth to the point where like you have to know every ounce of like what these, you know, female characters went through. My goodness, I kind of border on calling this book misogynistic.
I would say so, honestly, intentionally or not. Of course, it's egregious at a certain point. This is what I'm talking about when I say that this book will have such a contrived schlocky YA plot, but then it will be like, and here is a graphic description of a girl in Vietnam being assaulted by an American commander, and it is just used as something to further the plot and shock the reader and shock the male characters into action.
Yeah.
So I have no choice but to take it seriously as a book and say that it does a garbage job with what it's trying to do.
Sure.
You know, if it was just YA, I would give it a pass. But it's trying to be more adult than the story itself is. And it's doing that just by adding in assault where really the description is not necessary.
I agree. I often talk about, you know, like with Hanya Yanagihara, right? I think about like...
Oh, that's a whole thing right there.
It is, but I think about, okay, is this some sort of lived and learned experience? Are they're coming from somewhere? Yes, the mind's very creative. You're coming up with I mean, you know, it's fiction, right? But, you know, it came off as very misogynistic. And I said, you know, I don't know if this was maybe some instance of his life or whatever, or something he imagined, you know, being this like hero to a woman. And it was very, it just missed the mark in a lot of areas, and it just fell flat. Wasn't a huge fan.
Because like you can, sure, if you want to be the hero to the woman, fine, whatever. But she doesn't have to go through all these terrible things just to make you out to be the hero. Like, you know.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Okay, so at several points in the novel, characters face ethical dilemmas. What did you think about Joe's choices, particularly regarding what to do with the information he uncovers? Were his actions justified? So obviously we're alluding to the end scene where he goes and he confronts the father-in-law of the young girl who was killed. So what did you guys think about that?
Okay, so last night, I think it was Dulce who mentioned it. She was like, bro, why are you showing up there by yourself with like no weapons or like no backup? Again, that's part of the whole like male fantasy thing. Like, oh, I can resolve this by myself. I don't need to take anything. No, like, come on, just okay, fine, go by yourself, but have a backup plan. Or like call Lila or call, I don't know, like your professor that you're like, hey, so I'm working on the project and I'm gonna go confront this guy. So just a heads up, if I don't make it in the class or something, or even give a heads up to that. What was it, Rupert or Rufus?
Rupert, yeah.
Rupert, yeah. Just
Innocence
have a
guy.
contingency plan. Like, no one's gonna die immediately if you don't go confront this guy right now. Give yourself some time to prep.
It was like former bar bouncer turns into John Wick. All of a sudden.
Which another thing.
Oh my God! Sorry, go ahead.
I learned some moves, and he's beating up everybody. I'm like, God.
If you hit the side of the knee.
Oh my God.
Go talk about it.
So, all right. Forgive me for the small tangent I'm about to go on. I have unfortunately read all the 50 Shades of Grey books. I'm not going to go into the details of that.
Sure.
I did not love them.
Yeah.
But that book is famously serialized fan fiction, changed around a bit, and then published into an actual novel. And there are a lot of unnecessary action scenes in there because it was like, uh-oh, y'all were bored by the last chapter and I need something important to happen.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to throw in an action scene, even though I don't know how to write action scenes and there's no reason for this to happen because it'll keep reader engagement. That is what this book felt like throughout its entire run. It felt like somebody meant to write a one-chapter fan fiction and then it got popular and they wrote multiple chapters.
I agree.
And the way that things are spaced out in terms of like the reveal of backstories and stuff does feel like something interesting has to happen in every chapter so people stay engaged. So when he's just like, okay, well, the only way that I can get this guy that I care about for some reason exonerated before he dies of cancer is I have to go John Wick, and I have to go like confront this guy, and I'm in a trunk. But here's a very detailed description of how I got out of the trunk, went out into the woods, survived in the snow.
Yeah.
Look at how smart I am. Is there a reason for my character to have like all of these skills?
Yeah.
No. Like even on, again, Sunset on the Reaping, they're like almost egregiously so. Every single time that Haymitch thinks of like a creative survival situation, he'll be like, and I remember I used to do this back where I lived, like in the seam. Going from that to this, where he's like, and all of a sudden in my very sheltered life, I knew how to fashion clothes out of like fishing twine. And I'm like, what is happening?
No, that's a fair point, because they made this guy out to seem like, the everyman. But then it's like, oh, by the way, he has a secret set of skills.
Yeah.
It kind of makes
my
me think
God.
of, it's going to be an opposite, but like, what is it? I think Resident Evil 7, where you have Ethan, the protagonist. No.
8.
It's 8, yeah, Village, because, well, it's both of them.
I
But,
passed Village, by the way. Great game.
yeah, but like
good.
Ethan, he's an everyman.
Yeah.
Like, he's just a common dude, and you genuinely like see him trying to like figure out how to do things and stuff. And that's kind of what this book wanted to make Joe seem like. He's an everyman, but
It comes out of nowhere.
yeah.
He does. Well, speaking of Jimmy Hoffa, they friggin' cinder blocked him, and he's like gonna end up at the bottom. Like, what the
The
heck?
mafioso thing.
Yeah.
Like,
That's why I said Jimmy Hoffa. Like, 'cause seriously, like, it turned into a mafia plot. Like, what? We're watching Goodfellas. Like, it kind of just threw me for a loop there.
oh
Yeah.
my God, don't even get me started on
Like-
that, dude.
You know what the good thing is about this book? It's prompted a lot of good discussion so far.
It
Oh,
has.
yeah.
I think it's been the book that really generated a lot of like, what the hell, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like really good discussion though. Whether you
Yeah.
hated it, loved it, whatever. It's good to talk about these things. So
It's fascinatingly bad.
And like the reviews, it has like fairly
decent
Yeah.
reviews.
Yeah.
So Allen Eskens, if you're listening to this, I mean, we're pretty much
Yeah, and I know it was your
Roasting your
first book.
book.
Allen Eskens, I know it was your first
Right.
book. And I'm like, hey, we all start somewhere. I don't know about your other work, and I know that you're listening, Allen Eskens. I'm sure that your
It sounds like a threat.
I know that your future work probably is much better than this, but I was going into this book not knowing that and was just like, oh, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan at all.
You're not a fan of this fiction.
I'm not.
Yeah, no, it was bad. For those of us who aren't writers and stuff, but it's a fair assessment of the writing style. of
And we're the
book.
Yeah.
readers. We're allowed to critique.
Correct.
Which is what
Yeah.
we're doing. So
Okay, so at what point in the story did your opinion change about who killed Crystal Hagen? Who did
Immediately.
you think the murderer was?
okay,
No,
so
if that's fair.
that's probably like the one thing where it's like, okay, it was alluding to it being the stepfather for the longest time, and then the shift to the brother. Like
brother.
that could have been
Yeah.
a good plot twist, but it just felt like
It
so
was-
out of
it was
nowhere.
It was a quick twist. I mean, if you want to call it that. But even then, the foreshadowing was there that like the stepfather and the stepbrother were both kind of weird. They had to be in cahoots. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. It was very. Yeah, I agree with you. That pretty much in the beginning you were like, okay, it's clearly not this dude Carl. So
Yeah, it's.
Would you like to pop off again, my guy?
I don't have quite as much to say about this part, but it is. I knew it was the stepfather was involved almost immediately because they built him up to be like, and he was like weirdly religious and controlling of Crystal, and I'm like, so it's gonna be him, right? And then literally when Joe goes to confront him, he's like, hey, by the way, I know what you did, and instead of being like, yeah, I did, like what do you want or whatever, he's just like spouting off Bible
Right.
verses like
Cryptid, like the
a
Bible and
like a
God.
cartoon, like Claude Frollo, just like just like, and the wicked shall, like, what are we doing?
like
What
a
are
children
we
of the
doing?
corn. It
God's
was children of
judgment
the
shall
corn.
reign upon thy children.
Yeah, and daughters are a gift from God to their fathers, which is why I had to kill her.
Yeah.
It's,
It was a Malachi line for sure.
I'm like, listen, I knew it wasn't Carl immediately because this book insists so heavily on making Carl seem like a good guy, you
Yeah.
know? And I feel like there was way more potential if they had, like I'd said before, made him a bit more morally gray, but they literally immediately are like, okay, well, this is a very honest gentleman who is just like sagely wise and mysterious and
But then his friends over here are like, oh, so hey, he saved me.
Yeah.
You know, my leg is proof that he saved me. And then not
Oh my
just
God.
that.
Yeah, he saved me and he saved this girl, which means that none of the other horrors of war could have made him have such terrible PTSD that he had mental decline later in life. Because as we all know, you can, if you have strong morals at one point in your life, you can never, ever, ever have bad morals later in life.
It was so dumb. He was like, look at my big toe, bro. Not a killer. And it's like,
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay. It's so stupid. But yeah. Okay. Okay. Really quick. Okay, but did you pick up on the foreshadowing of the book? We talked about the diary earlier. Somebody pointed out, I don't remember who it was yesterday, but they said, think about the diary. She openly talked about Carl. She said Carl's name in the diary everywhere.
Yeah.
But then there was code, so clearly it wasn't Carl.
Yeah, she would have just said Carl's name in the diary, in the exposition diary, as I'm calling it.
Yeah.
She would have just said Carl's name freely, and I don't know why nobody decides to bring that up. It's like, why would she just now start talking in code?
I agree. Mm-hmm. That was a valid point. So, okay. So the book had many themes, such as mental illness, the effects of trauma, alcoholism, addiction, etc. Which theme impacted you the most and why?
Impacted is such a strong word.
Yeah, or what did you feel about, whether it's the writing style of certain things that he touched on?
It's, as I've said already, I feel like dark things like this and dark themes are used only as vehicles to drive the plot and not to actually explore them.
Okay.
He brings up the Vietnam War, and he uses it just as isn't this a sad backstory? Not the horrors of war. It was, it was in the contract basically to kill those people, so he's not going to feel bad about that. But this specific commander that he had to kill, even though he was saving a girl's life, which means that it was morally correct, that's what he's haunted by. Not PTSD from the Vietnam War, which is a thing that famously happened.
Right, they even mentioned the friggin' napalm. Like, he's
Yeah.
got scars from the napalm all over his skin. But
that's
no,
not a problem.
Agent Orange, yeah.
Yeah, and as for listen, again, I could get on my soapbox about this. I'm not going to.
Please do so.
Pull me off my soapbox if at any time
You don't see it, but your chair is lifting up by itself.
Oh my God. But literally, it is Autism Awareness Month, if anyone does not know, April. And I am autistic. And literally, it's like, okay, and we're going to delve into the fact that, like, how having an autistic child or an autistic brother can, like, make a family situation complicated. And I'm like, the reason that this character that Jeremy, Joe's brother, is autistic is just so Joe has a plot-related reason to go between college and home. And again, it gets dropped like that whenever it no longer serves the plot.
Yep.
There are many other ways that autism can be explored in fiction, and I'm not going to say that people are always going to be as well informed as they should, and this book is not necessarily insensitive about it, but it is very much intentionally or not, there is the bias of Jeremy's autism is treated as burdensome in a plot related way.
Yeah.
And, I'm tired of that personally.
Sure.
You see it everywhere. I'm tired of it. And I feel like that, in addition with how they really don't touch on PTSD from war at all, despite the fact that they will bring these things up as set dressing, as plot devices, I feel like it doesn't touch on mental illness at all. I feel like it's just... And the mother's bipolarity as well.
It's mentioned once.
Yeah.
Yep. It's used as, and this is something that gives you shorthand for how this experience is, but it's not actually delved into. And I just thought that was because Joe was just at a very base, naive level of knowing about these things, and he would find out about these things. But no, everyone talks about the autism, bipolarity, or like her behavior as a result of potential bipolarity, and the Vietnam War exactly the same way.
Yeah.
With no offering of perspective basically at all. And it's really disappointing because I feel like it could have gone into all of that a lot more.
You know what's sad? The fact that with like the way this novel was describing things and just like not handling them well, Jeremy having autism, I was waiting for like the other shoe to drop for just like him to say something so out of pocket or like, make it seem like just something so terrible. Excuse me. And the fact that it never came to that, I'm like, oh, okay, well, glad he wasn't totally disrespectful.
Yeah, glad he wasn't bigoted, but still.
Yeah, true. It was. I think he was a filler to just, like you said, you mentioned to plot driven, to have a problem from Austin, Minnesota or whatever, to like wherever they were from, Minneapolis or whatever. But it was like, okay, let's put this autistic young man in here and he's going to solve this puzzle, and boom.
Yeah, which that is a tired trope too.
That
drives me crazy. You can put it into the story. It's not like other people haven't done it. It's not even like that's not a very common like thriller trope.
Yeah.
You know, like, but like, you were also setting him up to be kind of the heart of the story. You were setting it up to be, this is Joe's reason for dealing with all the things that he's dealing with.
Yeah.
But not really, because he actually really cares about Carl, and he actually really cares about Lila, and Jeremy's just going to be at home.
Yeah.
You know?
It probably would have been more interesting if, when Dan went to go kidnap Lila, if instead he had maybe kidnapped Jeremy. Yeah. That might have been a little bit more,
I would have liked that.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit more like, oh, okay, I'm invested now.
Yeah.
Okay, so after reading The Life We Bury, would you recommend it to others?
Yeah.
Sarcasm.
Okay. No, genuinely, if this does interest you, and if you like it, all the power to you.
Yeah.
It is a quick read.
Mm-hmm.
It is a serviceable enough thriller. There may be twists that you're not expecting in there. And if you want to go out and read it, it sounds like something that's up your alley, go for it.
Sure.
I will recommend it only on that basis. If you want something that you will read, be like, that was okay, and then just move on. If you want to dive into the way that this story kind of fumbles its way through dark topics, I also recommend it. But personally, I am never going to read it again. I did not like it. I would give it no more than a 3 out of 10.
Fair assessment. What about you, Rosanna?
Same thing. It's a very short book, so if you're just looking for something to pass the time,
sure.
Maybe you see the cover at a store and you're like, oh, okay. Maybe see if your library has it first.
Yeah.
Before buying it, and then read it there. But again, it's short enough that you could just pass a nice little moment with it and just be like, okay, well, that was something. So in that aspect, yeah, but if I were recommending like, oh, dude, you should check this out, that would absolutely not make it on that recommendation.
Yeah.
This is one of those books I call like an airplane mode book.
Yeah.
Put it on, if you get it on Hoopla CloudLibrary, which it's available on both, listen to it, cool. Maybe you saw the physical. If you do want to purchase it, it's there at the store at the airport, cool.
Yeah.
But I definitely wouldn't recommend it as like, and this is as somebody who doesn't read a lot of fiction, but I was just kind of like, okay, quick read, wasn't horrible, but it was just like so disappointing for a lot of reasons. And the end was just tied up so nicely in a red little bow. And
yeah, because it could have had, like the plot description, it sounded interesting.
It did.
Like,
it really did.
The back cover and everything, but it just...
Yeah.
Fell flat.
Underwhelming.
So my last question, as always, is what are you currently reading?
Oh, man. I just finished Sunrise on the Reaping. Such a good book.
Mm-hmm. I know you mentioned it earlier, but when you're going from reading that caliber of a book to like this, that's such a hard transition.
Yeah. Next on my list, I'm going to be reading The Autistic Trans Guide to Life. It is currently on CloudLibrary. Like I said, it's Autism Awareness Month, and personally, I am invested in the anecdotes of people from my communities. So I am going to be checking that one out and probably recommending it on our staff picks over at West.
Nice.
Rosanna?
At the moment, I'm reading a couple of the Avatar comics because they've been putting out a pretty decent amount of like new supplemental material, both related to the Legend of Korra series and the Avatar, the original series.
Yeah.
Nice.
Funny enough, my pick for last month was the Legend of Korra Adventure on Panquang Island. I think that was it. And it dealt with Mako and Bolin. I wasn't super into it. It could have been a lot better. And also I just have a bias against Mako. I'm not a fan of him, so I don't think he got a lot of development in this, but again, I'm already pre-biased to just not like him.
Valid.
But with that said, right now I'm reading Avatar: The Last Airbender, Ashes of the Academy, and then after that, I'm gonna do The Bounty Hunter and the The title's cut off. But with that said, that one deals with Iroh and June. So
Oh, nice.
Cool.
yeah.
Good stuff. I obviously just finished this one. I started the new book club read, which I'll let you give a synopsis of if you'd like, Black Angels. But I put a hold on Fahrenheit 182.
Nice.
The sequel?
The sequel. Somebody jokingly thought it was a sequel to Fahrenheit.
I'm not going to lie. I thought that you had misremembered the title.
No. Fahrenheit 182. It's Mark Hoppus. I don't know how to pronounce the last name. The singer from Blink 182. It's his biography.
No way. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I put that on hold. It's published today. So I'm hoping Haley buys it, so I can listen to that one. So.
Nice.
Very nice.
And that's a good thing you put a preemptive hold on it.
Yes. So for those
so
of you listening, if you suggest it on your CloudLibrary app and you're first in line when it is purchased, you'll be the first one in line for it. So
It's always a treat.
it is. It really is. And you get it, and you're like, oh crap. And then if you're reading another book, what I do, because you have 3 days to check it out, I'll wait till like that last day because I'm trying to finish this one. So it doesn't start the 21 days and I'm down to 18 when I finish this one. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Fair.
Boy math, I guess. Whatever.
All right, so with that, that's going to wrap up this episode, this riveting episode, I'm going to say.
It was a good one. I like it.
Our Libros Libations cover pick. Again, that was The Life We Bury by Allen Eskens. If you want to check that out after we just got done dookying all over it, then by all means, head to CloudLibrary and Hoopla. We have both the ebook and audiobook. And then next month's pick is going to be The Black Angels by Maria Smilios. And just a quick little tidbit on that one. New York City, 1929, a sanatorium, a deadly disease, and a dire nurse shortage. So begins the remarkable true story of the black nurses who helped cure one of the world's deadliest plagues, tuberculosis, which, if you remember anything from history class, that era went really hard, especially here in America.
It did. Yep.
All right. And so remember, if you want to check out The Black Angels, check it out on Hoopla and CloudLibrary. And also be sure to join us May 5th at Burleson Yard Garden for our book club discussion that day. Hopefully it is just as riveting, if not more so, than this one.
I hope so.
But that's going to be it for us today. Thank you again so much for joining us here on BiblioTech On Air, our BiblioTech's official podcast. All right, with that, we're wrapping it up. I'm Rosanna.
I'm professional hater Lewis.
And I'm Romeo.
And we'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.
Thank you.